I received a long, long time ago, I'm sorry for that. A long, long time ago, I received the request for original fairy tales. As you know, Disney tends to make fairy tales slightly nicer than they originally were. So here we go. I picked two. I picked Bluebeard and Rapunzel. They're not by English authors. I'm going to read them in English, obviously. But Bluebeard is by Charles Perrault, and Rapunzel is a Grimm fairy tale, which is German. So, no knowledge of English literature for today, just some English listening practice and a nice pair of stories, I suppose. Here we go. Let's start off with Bluebeard. There was once a man who had fine houses, both in town and country, a deal of silver and gold plate, embroidered furniture, and coaches gilded all over with gold. But this man was so unlucky as to have a blue beard, which made him so frightfully ugly that all the women and girls ran away from him. One of his neighbours, a lady of quality, had two daughters who were perfect beauties. He desired of her one of them in marriage, leaving to her the choice which of the two she would bestow on him. Neither of them would have him, and they sent him backwards and forwards from one to the other, not being able to bear the thoughts of marrying a man who had a blue beard. Adding to their disgust and aversion was the fact that he had already been married to several wives, and nobody knew what had become of them. Bluebeard, to engage their affection, took them with their mother and 3 or 4 ladies of their acquaintance, with other young people of the neighbourhood, to one of his country houses, where they stayed a whole week. The time was filled with parties, hunting, fishing, dancing, mirth and feasting. Nobody went to bed, but all passed the night in rallying and joking with each other. In short, everything succeeded so well that the youngest daughter began to think that the man's beard was not so very blue after all, and that he was a mighty civil gentleman. As soon as they returned home, the marriage was concluded. About a month afterwards, Bluebeard told his wife that he was obliged to take a country journey for 6 weeks at least, about affairs of very great consequence. He desired her to divert herself in his absence, to send for her friends and acquaintances, to take them into the country if she pleased, and to make good cheer wherever she was. "Here," said he, "are the keys to the 2 great wardrobes wherein I have my best furniture. These are to my silver and gold plate, which is not every day in use. These open my strong boxes, which hold my money, both gold and silver. These my caskets of jewels. And this is the master key to all my apartments. But as for this little one here, it is the key to the closet at the end of the great hall on the ground floor. Open them all, go into each and every one of them, except that little closet, which I forbid you, and forbid it in such a manner that, if you happen to open it, you may expect my just anger and resentment." She promised to observe very exactly whatever he had ordered. And then he, after having embraced her, got into his coach and proceeded on his journey. Her neighbours and good friends did not wait to be sent for by the newly married lady. They were impatient to see all the rich furniture of her house, and had not dared to come while her husband was there because of his blue beard, which frightened them. They ran through all the rooms, closets, and wardrobes, which were all so fine and rich that they seemed to surpass one another. After that, they went up into the 2 great rooms, which contained the best and richest furniture. They could not sufficiently admire the number and beauty of the tapestry, beds, couches, cabinets, stands, tables, and looking-glasses, in which you might see yourselves from head to foot. Some of them were framed with glass, others with silver, plain and gilded, the finest and most magnificent that they had ever seen. They ceased not to extol and envy the happiness of their friend, who in the meantime in no way diverted herself in looking upon all these rich things, because of the impatience she had to go and open the closet on the ground floor. She was so much pressed by her curiosity that, without considering that it was very uncivil for her to leave her company, she went down a little back staircase, and with such excessive haste that she nearly fell and broke her neck. Having come to the closet door, she made a stop for some time, thinking about her husband's orders, and considering what unhappiness might attend her if she was disobedient. But the temptation was so strong that she could not overcome it. She then took the little key and opened it, trembling. At first she could not see anything plainly, because the windows were shut. After some moments she began to perceive that the floor was all covered over with clotted blood, on which lay the bodies of several dead women ranged against the walls. These were all the wives whom Bluebeard had married and murdered, one after another. She thought she should have died for fear, and the key, which she pulled out of the lock, fell out of her hand. After having somewhat recovered her surprise, she picked up the key, locked the door, and went upstairs into a chamber to recover. But she could not, so much was she frightened. Having observed that the key to the closet was stained with blood, she tried 2 or 3 times to wipe it off, but the blood would not come out. In vain did she wash it, and even rub it with soap and sand. The blood still remained, for the key was magical, and she could never make it quite clean. When the blood was gone off from one side, it came again on the other. Bluebeard returned from his journey the same evening, saying that he had received letters upon the road informing him that the affair he went about had concluded to his advantage. His wife did all she could to convince him that she was extremely happy about his speedy return. The next morning he asked for the keys, which she gave him, but with such a trembling hand that he easily guessed what had happened. "What," said he, "is not the key of my closet among the rest?" "I must," said she, "have left it upstairs upon the table." "Fail not," said Bluebeard, "to bring it to me at once." After several goings backwards and forwards, she was forced to bring him the key. Bluebeard, having very attentively considered it, said to his wife, "Why is there blood on the key?" "I don't know," cried the poor woman, paler than death. "You do not know," replied Bluebeard. "I very well know. You went into the closet, didn't you? Very well, madam, you shall go back and take your place among the ladies you saw there." Upon this she threw herself at her husband's feet and begged his pardon with all the signs of true repentance, vowing that she would never more be disobedient. She would have melted a rock, so beautiful and sorrowful was she. But Bluebeard had a heart harder than any rock. "You must die, madam," said he, "at once." "Since I must die," answered she, looking upon him with her eyes all bathed in tears, "give me some little time to say my prayers." "I give you," replied Bluebeard, "half a quarter of an hour, but no, not 1 moment more." When she was alone, she called out to her sister and said to her, "Sister Anne," for that was her name, "go up, I beg you, to the top of the tower, and look if my brothers are not coming. They promised me they would come today, and if you see them, give them a sign to make haste." Her sister Anne went to the top of the tower, and the poor afflicted wife cried out from time to time, "Anne, Sister Anne, do you see anyone coming?" And Sister Anne said, "I see nothing but a cloud of dust in the sun and the green grass." In the meanwhile, Bluebeard, holding a great sabre in his hand, cried out as loud as he could bawl to his wife, "Come down instantly, or I shall come up to you." "One moment longer, if you please," said his wife, and then she cried out very softly, "Anne, Sister Anne, do you see anybody coming?" And Sister Anne answered, "I see nothing but a cloud of dust in the sun and the green grass." "Come down quickly," cried Bluebeard, "or I will come up to you." "I'm coming," answered his wife, and then she cried, "Anne, Sister Anne, don't you see anyone coming?" "I see," replied Sister Anne, "a great cloud of dust approaching us." "Are they my brothers?" "Alas, no, dear sister. I see a flock of sheep." "Will you not come down?" cried Bluebeard. "One moment longer," said his wife, and then she cried out, "Anne, Sister Anne, do you see nobody coming?" "I see," said she, "two horsemen, but they are still a great way off." "God be praised," replied the poor wife joyfully. "They are my brothers. I will make them a sign as well as I can for them to make haste." And then Bluebeard bawled out so loud that he made the whole house tremble. The distressed wife came down and threw herself at his feet, all in tears, with her hair about her shoulders. "This means nothing," said Bluebeard. "You must die." Then, taking hold of her hair with one hand and lifting up the sword with the other, he prepared to strike off her head. The poor lady, turning about to him and looking at him with dying eyes, desired him to afford her one little moment to recollect herself. "No, no," said he, "commend yourself to God," and was ready, just ready to strike. At this very instant there was such a loud knocking at the gate that Bluebeard made a sudden stop. The gate was opened, and two horsemen entered. Drawing their swords, they ran directly to Bluebeard. He knew them to be his wife's brothers, one a dragoon, the other a musketeer, so he ran away immediately to save himself, but the two brothers pursued and overtook him before he could get to the steps of the porch. Then they ran their swords through his body and left him dead. The poor wife was almost as dead as her husband, and had not enough strength to rise and welcome her brothers. Bluebeard had no heirs, and so his wife became mistress of all his estate. She made use of one part of it to marry her sister Anne to a young gentleman who had loved her a long while, another part to buy captains' commissions for her brothers, and the rest to marry herself to a very worthy gentleman, who made her forget the ill time she had passed with Bluebeard. Second fairy tale, Rapunzel. There once lived a man and his wife, who had long wished for a child, but in vain. Now there was at the back of their house a little window which overlooked a beautiful garden of the finest vegetables and flowers. But there was a high wall around it, and no one ventured into it, for it belonged to a witch of great might, and of whom all the world was afraid. One day that the wife was standing at the window and looking into the garden, she saw a bed filled with the finest rampion, and it looked so fresh and green that she began to wish for some, and at length she longed for it greatly. This went on for days, and as she knew she could not get the rampion, she pined away, and grew pale and miserable. Then the man was uneasy and asked, "What is the matter, dear wife?" "Oh," answered she, "I shall die unless I can have some of that rampion to eat that grows in the garden at the back of our house." The man, who loved her very much, thought to himself, "Rather than lose my wife, if I'll get some rampion, cost what it will." So in the twilight he climbed over the wall into the witch's garden, plucked hastily a handful of rampion, and brought it to his wife. She made a salad of it at once and ate of it to her heart's content. But she liked it so much, and it tasted so good, that the next day She longed for it thrice as much as she had done before. If she was to have any rest, then man must climb over the wall once more. So he went in the twilight again, and as he was climbing back, he saw, all at once, the witch standing before him, and was terribly frightened as she cried with angry eyes, "How dare you climb over into my garden like a thief and steal my rampion? It shall be the worse for you." "Oh," answered he, "be merciful rather than just. I have only done it through necessity, for my wife saw your rampion out of the window, and became possessed with so great a longing that she would have died if she could not have had some to eat." And then the witch said, "If it is all as you say, you may have much rampion as you like, on one condition. The child that will come into the world must be given to me. It shall go well with the child, and I will care for it like a mother." In his distress of mind, the man promised everything, and when the time came when the child was born, the witch appeared, and giving the child the name of Rapunzel, which is the same as rampion, she took it away with her. Rapunzel was the most beautiful child in the world. When she was 12 years old, the witch shut her up in a tower in the midst of a wood, and it had neither steps nor door, only a small window above. And when the witch wished to be let in, she would stand below and would cry, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel had beautiful long hair that shone like gold. When she heard of the voice of the witch, she would undo the fastening of the upper window, unbind the plaits of her hair, and let it down 20 ells below, and the witch would climb up by it. After they had lived thus a few years, it happened that as the king's son was riding through the wood, he came to the tower, and as he drew near he heard a voice singing so sweetly that he stood still and listened. It was Rapunzel in her loneliness, trying to pass away the time with sweet songs. The king's son wished to go in to her, and sought to find a door in the tower, but there was none. So he rode home, but the song had entered into his heart, and every day he went into the wood and listened to it. Once, as he was standing there under a tree, he saw the witch come up, and listened while she called out, "Oh, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And then he saw how Rapunzel let down her long tresses, and how the witch climbed up by it and went into her. And he said to himself, "Since that is the ladder, I will climb it and seek my fortune." And the next day, as soon as it began to grow dusk, he went to the tower and cried, "Oh, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And she let down her hair, and the king's son climbed up by it. Rapunzel was greatly terrified when she saw that a man had come into her, for she had never seen one before. But the king's son began speaking so kindly to her, and told her how her singing had entered into his heart, so that he could have no peace until he had seen her herself. That must be himself. And then Rapunzel forgot her terror, and when he asked her to take him for her husband, she saw that he was young and beautiful, and she thought to herself, "I certainly like him much better than old Mother Gothel." And she put her hand into his hand. She said, "I would willingly go with thee, but I do not know how I shall get out. When thou comest, bring each time a silken rope, and I will make a ladder, and when it is quite ready, I'll get down by it out of the tower, and thou shalt take me away on thy horse." They agreed that he should come to her every evening, as the old woman came in the daytime. So the witch knew nothing of all of this until once Rapunzel said to her unwittingly, "Mother Gothel, how is it that you climb up here so slowly, and the king's son is with me in a moment?" "Oh, wicked child!" cried the witch. "What is this I hear? I thought I had hidden thee from all the world, and thou hast betrayed me." In her anger, she seized Rapunzel by her beautiful hair, struck her several times with her left hand, and then grasping a pair of shears in her right, snip snap, the beautiful locks lay on the ground. And she was so hard-hearted that she took Rapunzel and put her in a waste and desert place, where she lived in great woe and misery. The same day on which she took Rapunzel away, she went back to the tower in the evening, and made fast the severed locks of hair to the window hasp. And the king's son came and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Then she let the hair down, and the king's son climbed up, but instead of his dearest Rapunzel, he found the witch looking at him with wicked, glittering eyes. "Aha!" cried she, mocking him. "You came for your darling, but the sweet bird sits no longer in the nest and sings no more. The cat has got her, and I will scratch out your eyes as well. Rapunzel is lost to you. You will see her no more." The king's son was beside himself with grief, and in his agony he sprang from the tower. He escaped with his life, but the thorns on which he fell put out his eyes. And then he wandered blind through the wood, eating nothing but roots and berries, and doing nothing but lament and weep for the loss of his dearest wife. So he wandered several years in misery, until at last he came to the desert place where Rapunzel lived, with her twin children that she had borne, a boy and a girl. At first he heard a voice that he thought he knew, and when he reached the place from which it seemed to come, Rapunzel knew him, and fell on his neck and wept. And when her tears touched his eyes, they became clear again, and he could see with them as well as ever. Then he took her to his kingdom, where he was received with great joy, and they lived long and happily